The quiet birthday sun was just beginning to rise over the city, casting a soft golden glow across the windows of a small apartment tucked away in a quiet corner of Los Angeles. Inside that modest space, Keanu Reeves sat on the floor, barefoot, a cup of tea in his hands. Beside him, in an old armchair worn from years of use, sat his mother, Patricia. Her legs were wrapped in a thick blanket, and her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the teacup he had placed on the small table beside her. She didn't speak much anymore. The pain had taken its toll, silent, patient, and relentless. She hadn't walked in weeks. The doctors had said it was temporary, something they could fix with therapy and time. But Keanu had watched the hope drain from her eyes, little by little, day after day. He had refused to leave her alone. He had canceled meetings, turned down scripts, and ignored calls from studios. Now, nothing mattered more to him than being there. This morning was no different. He had barely slept. Every few hours he'd wake to check on her, adjust her pillows, help her to the bathroom, or simply sit with her while she dozed in and out of shallow sleep. No complaints ever left his lips. Frustration crossed his face. He never once spoke of the sacrifice. Because in his heart, it wasn't a burden, it was love. Deep and silent and real. "Do you want some eggs?" he asked softly, placing his tea aside. Patricia shook her head slowly. "Not hungry," she whispered. He gave a small nod, not pressing her. Instead, he picked up a photo album from the shelf and opened it beside her. The pages were old, the corners bent, but the memories inside were untouched. There were photos of him as a child, messy-haired and grinning with missing teeth. There were school plays, birthdays, and faded holiday pictures. One showed Patricia in her 20s, young and radiant, holding him in her arms on a snowy street in Toronto. She had carried him then, held him through storms, through grief, through poverty, through everything. And now, when the world wasn't watching, when the spotlight had turned away, he was carrying her. Not for show, not for praise, but because it was his turn. "Remember? This one," he asked, pointing to the photo of them in front of their tiny Christmas tree. She smiled faintly. "You made that star from cardboard and foil," he laughed softly. "I thought it was the most beautiful star in the world." "It was," she said, her voice barely a breath. As the morning moved forward, Keanu gently helped her to sit up. Straighter. He slid his arms under her knees and back, lifting her like she weighed nothing at all. Well, she winced a little, but he was careful. He carried her to the couch, where the sun could warm her face. There were no words. She didn't ask, and he didn't explain. The way he moved, the way he held her, said everything. Later a nurse arrived, cheerful and kind. She checked Patricia's vitals and gave her medicine. Keanu stood nearby, asking questions, learning how to do things himself. He wanted to understand every pill, every stretch, every treatment. He had always played roles in movies where he saved people. But here, in real life, there was no script. It's only devotion. When the nurse left, Patricia looked at him and said, "You shouldn't stop your life for me?" He knelt beside her and held her hand. "You gave up everything for me once. I'm just doing what you already taught me." She closed her eyes, overwhelmed, and squeezed his hand. But just when the afternoon seemed peaceful, the doorbell rang. Keanu opened it to find a man in a black suit holding an envelope. He handed it over without a word and walked away. Keanu looked down. The envelope was from a hospital in Toronto. He hadn't heard from them in years. His heart skipped. He opened it and read the first few lines. His hands began to shake. He didn't want to believe it. He looked over at his mother, still resting peacefully on the couch, unaware that something from the past was coming back, something they had both buried long ago. His face grew pale. Inside the envelope was a medical report, but it wasn't hers, it was his sister's. He whispered under his breath, "She's still alive." And suddenly, everything changed, everything. The name they never spoke. Keanu sat on the edge of his bed, the letter still in his hands, the words echoing in his mind. His fingers gripped the edges like they might tear through time itself. His sister's name, Emily Reeves, was printed in black ink. Under it, a list of treatments, diagnoses, and a date. The report was only a few weeks old. He hadn't heard that name in years. His heart pounded in his chest, not because of fear, but because of guilt. He had buried her in his memory, not because he didn't love her, but because he didn't know how to live with the pain. They were close once, inseparable. She was younger, full of life, always laughing, always following him around the house. But she had struggled, in ways no one else saw. He remembered the night she disappeared. She had run away during a storm. Their mother had screamed her name down the hallway. Keanu had searched the streets for hours in the rain. They called the police. They knocked on every door. Weeks passed, then months, then years. No word, no trace, no goodbye. They both thought she was gone for good. But now, sitting here, the truth held in this thin envelope. Keanu felt a different kind of storm rising inside him. He stood up quickly, paced the room. Questions poured through his mind. Now, who sent this? Why hadn't the hospital contacted them sooner? Was she okay? Where was she? He turned and saw his mother dozing on the couch, wrapped in the same blanket she had used that night years ago when Emily didn't come home. He couldn't wake her. Not yet. Not until he knew more. He picked up his phone and called the number listed in the corner of the letter. A tired voice answered. Toronto Health Records. How may I help you? Keanu's voice was steady. Calling about a patient? Emily Reeves. The woman typed something on her end. Relationship to the patient? I'm her brother. A long pause. Then the tone shifted. I see. Yes. Her file was reopened recently. She's currently staying at a rehabilitation center outside the city. Not allowed to give details without proof of relation, but her case was flagged for family contact. Someone from our team must have mailed you, Keanu whispered. How long has she been there? She checked in 3 weeks ago. It's a complex case. The line fell silent. He hung up. His legs felt weak. Sat back down, his eyes fixed on the floor. Something inside him said she needed him and he needed answers. Not tomorrow. No. Not next week now. But how could he leave? His mother couldn't. Walk. She needed him. He looked over at her again, torn between two people who meant everything to him. The silence between those thoughts was heavy. That night, after dinner, he finally sat down beside Patricia. Her hands were warm. He gently placed the letter in them. She stared at it for a long time. I didn't think I'd see her name again, she whispered. Me either, Keanu said, barely breathing. She turned toward him, her eyes already moist. I still pray for her every night, even when I couldn't say her name. I never stopped loving her. He nodded. Me too. And she said something that surprised him. You have to go. He blinked. What? You have to go see her. I'll be okay. You. Can't even walk, Mom. I can't leave you alone. Then take me with you, she said quietly. He stared at her. Are you sure? He asked, if she's alive, she needs to see us. Both of us, no matter how broken we are. For the first time in weeks, Keanu smiled, a sad, grateful smile. And the next morning, he began to prepare. He packed carefully, placing soft blankets. In the van, he called his old friend Jonathan, who agreed to help drive. He carried his mother gently down the stairs, wrapped her safely in the front seat, and told her everything would be all right. They drove through cities, past rivers and hills. Retracing memories they had long forgotten, it wasn't easy. Patricia cried when they crossed into Canada. Keanu's single quotes hand shook when they passed the street where Emily had once skipped stones. And by the time they reached the rehab center, clouds had gathered above, as if the world itself knew what was coming. He walked in slowly, his mother in a wheelchair beside him. A nurse approached with kind eyes. You're here for Emily? Keanu nodded. The nurse led them down a quiet hallway, and when they turned the final corner, there she was, Emily Reeves. Older now, thinner, but still her. She turned her head, and when her eyes met his, she whispered one word. Keanu. The silence between them shattered. The eyes that remembered Emily stood in the center of the room like she didn't know whether to run or fall. Her hands trembled at her sides. Her eyes were wide and hollow, like she had seen 1,000 storms, but never learned how to explain them. The moment felt frozen, quiet, heavy. Almost too much for any of them to carry. Keanu stepped forward first. He didn't speak. He couldn't. His throat was tight, heart pounding, breath stuck in the back of his chest. But his eyes told the truth. They said, "I'm here." They said I never stopped looking. They said I still remember the little girl who tied string around my wrist so we'd never get separated. Emily's lips parted like she wanted to say something. Maybe an apology? Maybe a scream? Maybe nothing at all. But when she saw the wheelchair beside him and their mother sitting small and still, her whole face changed. "Mom?" she whispered, as if saying it out loud might break her. Patricia raised a hand, slow and shaking. "Baby," she said. Emily fell to her knees. It was like time collapsed in that hallway. 2 decades of pain and silence and distance washed over them in one crashing wave. The nurse gave them space, quietly stepping out. Keanu knelt beside his sister, and for the first time in years, they were all together. No one needed to explain anything. No one needed to fill in the silence. They just held each other. When they finally sat down inside Emily's room, the air still felt fragile. The place was small, but clean. A window let in soft afternoon light. There were a few books, a blanket draped across a chair, and a wall filled with scribbled sketches, faces, trees, shadows, eyes. Emily poured them water with shaking hands. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Keanu nodded. "I didn't think I'd get the chance." Patricia watched her children, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. Emily sat across from them, pulling her sleeves down over her wrists. "I was sick. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't even know what was happening to me. Voices, thoughts, fear, shame. I thought if I disappeared, I'd be doing everyone a favor." Keanu leaned in. "You didn't have to disappear. I never stopped loving you. But I was broken." She said, "So am I," Patricia whispered. That sentence broke something open. They spent the next hour talking. Not about the lost years, but about the things that held them together, even when they were apart. Emily told them how she had wandered, through shelters, hospitals, and strangers' kindness, how she had used a different name for years, how one day she collapsed in a park and a nurse with a soft voice convinced her to get help. "I finally gave them my real name last month," she said. "I didn't think anyone would care." Keanu reached across the table and took her hand. "You were never lost to us. Just far away." Later, as the sun dipped lower, they stepped outside together for a short walk. Keanu pushed his mother's wheelchair slowly beside Emily. Every now and then, he'd glance at her, still not believing this was real. Emily paused at one point and looked up at him. "You're different," she said. "So are you. Your silence. It's softer than it used to be. Like you're carrying things no one sees." Keanu smiled faintly. "Maybe I am." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "You really carried her all the way here?" "I did." Without a word, he nodded. "She carried me longer than I can ever repay." Tears filled Emily's eyes again. "You're still my big brother," she said. "But somehow you've become more." Tricia smiled in the chair, her hands folded in her lap. "He became who I prayed he'd be." That night, Keanu helped settle both women into a guest room inside the rehab center. The staff had offered to prepare a space for Patricia so they could stay longer. He laid out her clothes, arranged her medicine, and made sure she had her favorite pillow. Then he sat in the hallway alone, listening to the quiet sounds of 2 people he thought he'd never see together again. But peace never lasts long. Around midnight, stepped outside to take a call. His agent's number flashed on the screen. He answered, expecting it to be about a movie offer he had already turned down. But the voice on the other end was nervous. "Keanu, there's something you need to know. Someone's leaking your whereabouts. A tabloid got a tip you crossed the border with your mom. They're asking questions about a long-lost sister." His jaw clenched. "How, I don't know. But if this gets out, they'll come for you. And for her." He hung up without another word. He turned and looked through the window, saw Patricia and Emily asleep, faces calm, breathing steady. He knew peace had an expiration date. and someone was about to cross a line. The story they never asked to tell Keanu stood beneath the flickering hallway light, his back against the wall, hands deep in his coat pockets. He stared at nothing, but his mind was loud. Someone had leaked the story. Someone had followed them. He didn't care about headlines. He didn't care if they dragged his name across every front page. But he did care about one thing: his sister. Emily wasn't ready. She had only just begun to stitch herself back together. Her silence was still fragile, her smile still unsure. If the world came rushing in, she might break all over again. And this time, he wasn't sure they could put her back together. The next morning, the damage began. Outside the rehab center, a small black car parked across the street. No plates on the front. A man with a long-lens camera sat in the driver's seat, pretending to read a newspaper. Keanu noticed him first. His instincts had always been sharp. By noon, another car showed up. By evening, 2 more. Emily stayed inside, unaware of the growing storm, but Patricia noticed. "They're here, aren't they?" she asked from her chair by the window. Keanu gave a slow nod. "We have a day, maybe 2, before it gets worse." She didn't ask what he meant by worse. She already knew. That night, over dinner, Keanu sat across from Emily and watched her closely. She had braided her hair. Her hands no longer shook when she lifted her glass. She laughed, once a soft, unsure laugh, but it was real. He didn't want to take that away from her, but he had to tell her the truth. He said gently. "I need to talk to you about something?" She looked up, eyes still bright from the story she'd been sharing about a therapy session where she'd finally opened up about her drawings. He paused. The press found out. Said everything changed in an instant. Her smile vanished. She froze, like someone had poured ice water through her veins. "They know about me?" she asked, voice quiet. "They know something. Not everything, but enough." She looked down, then back up. "To dice. This little bit of peace we had. ... It's over." Keanu reached for her hand. "Only if we let it be." "But you know what they'll do," she said, voice cracking. "They'll twist it. They'll turn me into something I'm not. They'll say I abandoned you, that I lost my mind, that I'm broken." He shook his head. "They can say whatever they want. You are not broken. You are healing. And you're not alone. They'll show pictures," she whispered. "Old ones. Ones from when I looked like a ghost. Then we'll show new ones," Patricia said from the corner. "Ones where you're loved." The room fell silent again. Emily stood up slowly and walked to the window. She stared at the flashing cameras in the distance. Her shoulders rose and fell as she breathed through the panic. Then she said something no one expected. "Maybe it's time." Keanu stood. "Time for what?" "Speak, to tell the truth. Not the version they want, but mine." He stepped closer. "Are you sure?" "No," she said. "But I'm tired of hiding. Tired of being a secret in my own life." Keanu looked at her, seeing someone stronger than before. Not because she had healed completely, but because she was choosing to face the fire rather than run from it. "Then we'll do it together," he said. The next morning, Keanu called a trusted journalist, someone who had always respected his boundaries, someone who understood what privacy meant. He asked for one thing: truth without invasion. The interview was scheduled for the following day, not in a studio, not under lights, but inside the rehab center's small garden, a private place, just one camera, one chair for Emily, one for Keanu. Patricia watched from the window, wrapped in her favorite shawl. The journalist began with simple questions, but Keanu interrupted. "This isn't my story," he said. "It's hers." And then slowly, Emily began to speak. She talked about the voices in her head, the ones that told her she wasn't enough, the shame, the loneliness, the moment she left, the years of silence, the fear of returning, the long nights, the kind strangers, the cold hospital beds, the drawings she made when she couldn't cry anymore, and finally, the morning she said her name again at the front desk of a shelter. "I didn't come back because I was healed," she said. "I came back because I missed my family more than I feared my pain." The journalist didn't interrupt. Not once. Keanu sat beside her the whole time, hand resting gently on her shoulder, and when the camera turned off, Emily exhaled like she had just set down a weight she had carried for 20 years. That night, back in her room, she looked at her brother and said, "Thank you," he smiled. "For what?" "For carrying me," she whispered. "Even when I didn't know, you still remembered me." He looked at her, eyes wet. "You're my sister. I never forgot." But just when the world felt safe again, Nurse rushed in with a chart in her hands. "Patricia's heart rate is dropping," she said. "We need to move her now." Keanu jumped to his feet. Everything blurred. Sirens, shouts, flashing lights. He carried her again. But this time, it was a race against something none of them were ready for. The race with Silence Canu's arms wrapped around Patricia like a lifeline, his face tight with fear as he rushed through the white corridors of the rehab center. Nurses stepped aside, doors open like they already knew something sacred was. Passing through, Emily ran beside him, barefoot, heart pounding, lips whispering prayers she hadn't said since she was a child. Patricia's head leaned against Keanu's chest. Her eyes fluttered open for just a moment. "You're still carrying me," she murmured. "Always," he whispered. The nurses helped ease her onto a gurney. Wires, monitors, soft beeping. A doctor shouted for an injection. Someone started counting. One nurse placed her hand over Keanu's and said, "We'll do everything we can. Please wait outside." He didn't move. Not at first. Not until Emily gently pulled his arm. "We have to let them help," she said, her voice barely holding together. Outside the emergency room doors, Keanu paced. He clenched and unclenched his fists. His breath came shallow. His memories spun in a dizzy circle. The hospital smell, the panic, the helplessness, it all reminded him of when he lost his daughter. It reminded him of the night his best friend died. And now, it threatened to take the woman who raised him. Emily sat in a plastic chair, arms wrapped around herself. "It's not fair," she whispered. "We just got her back." Keanu stopped pacing. He sat beside her and took her hand. "She's strong, stronger than any of us." "But she's tired," Emily said. "I saw it in her eyes. She's been holding on just to see us together again." That truth stung more than anything. An hour passed then, too. A nurse finally emerged. "She's stable for now, but the next few days are critical. Her heart is weak. She's resting. You can see her one at a time." Keanu stood, but Emily stopped him gently. "Go first. She needs you." He nodded and walked in, heart beating louder with each step. Inside, Patricia lay under a pale blue blanket. Machines blinked softly beside her. Her eyes were closed, her face peaceful in a way that frightened him. He pulled a chair close and took her hand. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. "You scared us." Her eyes opened, slow and tired. "Still here," she whispered. He smiled through. "Tears? I'm glad." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that only exists between people who know everything that needs to be said has already been lived. "You did good," she said. "With Emily, with me?" He shook his head. "You did good." "You always had a soft heart," she said, "even when the world tried to make you hard." Her breathing grew slower. Her hand tightened around his. "Don't stop living after me," she said. "Promise me." His throat closed up. "Double quotes, I promise," he said. "You carry the world like it's yours to fix," she murmured. "But sometimes, you just need to let it be." He bent forward and kissed her forehead. "I'll try." When Emily came in next, Keanu stood just outside the door, listening to their muffled voices. He didn't want to intrude. This moment belonged to them. Inside, Emily sat by the bed, clutching Patricia's hand like she'd never let go. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything. For the years I disappeared. For the silence." Patricia looked at her daughter like she was seeing her for the first time. "You were never gone, just far away. I didn't think you could forgive me. I forgave you. The moment you left," she said, "because I knew you didn't leave to hurt me. You left because you were hurting." Tears spilled down Emily's cheeks. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too," Patricia said. And then Patricia closed her eyes again. That night, Keanu sat beside Emily in the hospital cafeteria. Both of them held cups of untouched coffee. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Emily broke the silence. You think she'll make it? Keanu looked toward the window, where the city lights flickered like stars. I think she's waiting for something. What? Maybe? For us to stop surviving and start living. The next morning, story broke. Headlines filled every corner of the internet. Keanu Reeves reunites with long-lost sister. Keanu's quiet journey of love and healing family. He never stopped believing in pictures of Emily, raw and unfiltered. Stood beside images of Keanu carrying Patricia through a hospital doorway. People weren't mocking. They weren't cruel. They were moved. The world didn't twist their story. For once it listened. Messages flooded in. Strangers shared stories. Of their lost siblings, of mental illness, of regret, of redemption. The world felt smaller. More human. Emily sat reading some of them, tears streaming down her face. I thought the world would eat me alive, she whispered. But they're not laughing. They're thanking us. Keanu sat beside her. Kindness is louder than people think. But just as a sliver of peace returned, a nurse appeared again. This time her voice was different. You should come now, she said. She's asking for both of you. Keanu and Emily rushed down the corridor. Inside the room, Patricia lay still. Her face was calm, her breathing slow. She smiled when she saw them. My babies, she whispered. Together at last. They each held one of her hands. Patricia looked at Keanu, then at Emily. Don't carry my pain, she said. Carry each other. And with one final breath, she let go. The hands that held them off hospital room was quiet. Too quiet. Not like the peaceful quiet of sleep or sunrise, but the kind that wraps around your chest and squeezes until you forget how to breathe. Keanu sat still, his hands still clutching. Patricia's, even though her warmth was already fading. Emily leaned against the window, her forehead pressed to the cold glass, her shoulders shaking silently. She didn't scream. She didn't speak. She just cried in a way only a daughter could cry for the mother who stayed. The mother who suffered. The mother who forgave everything without needing to be asked. The machine stopped beeping. A nurse came in, respectful and soft. They offered words, tissues, space, but Keanu just nodded. He didn't want noise. He didn't want the world to intrude. Not yet. Outside the room, people moved. Doors opened. Papers were signed. The process of goodbye had already started, but Keanu couldn't move, because she wasn't just gone. She had been his anchor, his reason, the one who believed in him when he couldn't. The one who never asked for anything except that he loved gently. Walk humbly, keep going. He finally stood. He gently tucked the blanket up around her shoulders like she was still sleeping, and then he whispered, Thank you for carrying me. ... When I didn't know how to walk, they held a private funeral 3 days later. No press, no cameras, just a few close friends, a quiet field. In a sky full of wind, Keanu carried her one last time down the hill, through the trees, to the place she had chosen years ago. It wasn't a cemetery. It was a garden, one she had visited often in her younger days, where sunlight touched every petal and nothing ever felt final. Emily stood beside him, holding a single white rose. The priest spoke, but Keanu didn't hear the words. He only felt the weight of memories. The sound of her voice calling him home. The way she used to laugh at her own jokes. The way she squeezed his hand before every audition, telling him he had already made her proud. After everyone left, Keanu and Emily stayed behind. They sat by the grave in silence. Then Emily spoke. I don't know what to do now. Keanu looked at her. We live, he said. Double quotes, how? He gave a small, tired smile. Together. Weeks passed, the world kept spinning. Movie studios called again. Offers returned. Interviews, red carpets. Flashing lights. But Keanu said no. At least for now. He spent his mornings in the garden, not hers. He had bought the land, preserved it, planted her favorite flowers, lilies, sunflowers, violets. A bench was placed under the biggest tree. A plaque that read, she carried us all without asking to be strongly moved in with him, not because she needed a place, but because they needed each other. They shared quiet breakfasts, long walks, and sometimes long silences that healed more than words ever could. She kept drawing. Every day, pages and pages. Not the dark, haunted sketches she once made, but pictures of hands holding hands, feet, walking side by side, a mother's smile, a brother's embrace. One afternoon, Keanu found her painting something new. "What's that?" he asked. "A children's book," she said shyly, "based on Mom." How she carried both of us without ever saying how heavy it was. He didn't speak, just knelt beside her and helped color the last page. A year passed. Keanu stood on a quiet stage inside a community center. He wasn't there to promote a movie. He was there to open a wellness center, one named after his mother. The Patricia Home for Rest, Healing, and Return It was built for people like Emily. For people who had walked away from life because it hurt too much. And for the families who had waited with open doors and breaking hearts. In front of him sat 50 people. Some were smiling, some were crying, and some were quiet like he had once. Then he looked out at them and said, "My mother taught me how to carry people not with strength, but with love. And when she couldn't walk, I carried her without a word. Not because she asked, not because I had to, but because love doesn't keep score. It just shows up. Even when it's tired, even when it's scared." He paused. "This place, Dot. That is. For all of you who need to be carried for a while, till you can stand again." The crowd stood and clapped. Some hugged. Some just held each other. Emily stood in the back, hands over her heart, proud and silent. And in that moment, Keanu knew he wasn't just carrying a memory. He was carrying her legacy. Not with sorrow, but with grace. That night, back at the garden, sat on the bench under the tree. Stars blinked above. He closed his eyes, and in the stillness, he could almost hear her voice again, soft, strong, like always. "You did good, baby. Now put me down. Go live." He smiled, and for the first time in a long time, he let her go. But he never stopped carrying the love.